Hi everyone. So this is a quick tutorial on lab 5. So far we have seen theoretically the go back and selective repeat protocols. So these are sliding window protocols. But it is one thing to learn them theoretically and another to actually implement these protocols and to explore them. So this is a very interesting lab that allows you to simulate and explore these protocols further. And this is very useful in solidifying our understanding of these protocols and in general about engineering practices, about validation, okay, developing finite state machines, coding them, doing event driven simulation and so on. So it's a very interesting and useful assignment. Okay, so basically we need to implement these protocols, right, and simulate them. So we need some way of simulating things. So there is an event driven simulation library in Python called SymPy, which we will be using for this assignment. Now the problem statement for this lab is located at this URL. Okay. Essentially, the lab is divided into two parts. In the first part, a template is given to you for the go back N protocol. Okay, what does this template consist of? So recall this picture here that we had. We had a sending side and a receiving side, and this is an unreliable channel. The sending side sends data packets, the receiving side sends back acknowledgements, and because it's an unreliable channel, some packets can get corrupted, some packets can get lost, and so on. And we have the sending application that generates messages and the receiving application that receives data, and we need to develop the logic of the sender and the receiver, right? So RDT stands for reliable data transfer. In this case, we are developing pipelined reliable data transfer, that is using the sliding window protocols. So the template which is given to you consists of Python codes or Python classes implementing each of these blocks. And our goal is to populate the logic for the RDT sender and the RDT receiver. Okay. So let's go to this URL for the lab. So this is the lab web page. Okay. And you are given a template for this lab. Okay. So this template consists of Python code for the go back N protocol and the other components that are there. So now I'm going to give you a quick overview of the lab and then I'll walk you through the code. Okay. So I have already downloaded these files into a folder. There is a Python file for packet that models a packet. There's one for the channel, one for the sending and receiving applications, one for the RDT sender and the RDT receiver clubbed into a file called protocol go back N. And we have finally a file called testbench wherein all these components are instantiated, tied together, and a simulation is run. Okay. So this is a problem statement which is located here. So let's take a look at the problem statement. So this is a problem statement for the lab. So the first part is on the go back N protocol where you have to just take the existing template and run various simulations. Okay. And the second part is where you have to actually implement the selective repeat protocol on your own. Okay. So we'll come back to this again. So now I'm going to walk you through the code for the template which is given. Okay. So let's go over the code. So the first file we'll take a look at is called packet.py. This describes the behavior of a packet. Okay. Now this template is essentially similar to the last template. There's only one small modification. Okay. So let's see what that is. So a packet has a payload. Okay. It has a length. So this is a new thing compared to the last lab. The packets have a length, which is the length of the packet in bits. Okay. It just says what is the length of the packet, and then there is a sequence number, okay, which is used for numbering the packets, and there is a corrupted flag which can be true or false. Then there is a function to corrupt a packet. If this function is called, the corrupted flag is set to true. and the payload is garbled up. And then there is a function to print the contents of a packet. Fine. So now notice that we have a field called packet length. So why do we need a field called packet length? Because now we have changed the behavior of the channel, and now the channel's behavior is it has a finite transmission rate. So if the length of the packet is L bits and the transmission rate is R bits per second, then this channel remains occupied for L by R, that is a transmission delay, right? So that is a delay required for transmitting a packet. So that delay adds up to the utilization of the channel. Okay, so essentially in comparison to the last lab, we have modeled the utilization of these two channels, and this packet length is just a field for measuring the utilization. Okay, so what we want to do is at the end of the simulation we want to see how much is the utilization of the channel and so on. So let's take a look now at the channel class. So this is the packet class. So this is the channel class. Okay, so what does the channel class have? This unreliable channel, just like last time, it has a probability of corruption, PC. This is the probability with which a packet gets corrupted. PL is the probability with which a packet gets lost. Okay, then it has a parameter called propagation delay. This is the time it takes each packet to propagate over the wire and reach the other side. Okay, now notice that the channel also has a transmission rate. Okay, this is in bits per second. This is the rate at which a packet can be transmitted. So the transmission delay would be the length of the packet divided by the transmission rate. Okay, and this is the variable used for maintaining how much is the utilization time. So each time a packet is transmitted, the L by R is the transmission delay, and that adds up, and finally we take the sum as the channel utilization time. Okay, so now this channel has a function called send, which is called by the RDT sender. So let's look at the template again. This is the template. So the channel has a function called UDT send. Who calls it? The RDT sender calls this function. Similarly, the ACK channel has a function UDT send, which is called by the receiver. So this is a function which is called to use the channel to send a packet across on the channel. When this is called, a packet gets copied on the channel. It could be lost or corrupted with certain probability, and finally it reaches the other end after a propagation delay amount of time. And in addition, the channel remains utilized for transmission delay amount of time. So that's the behavior of the channel. So let's see if the code reflects that. So here is the UDT send function. So basically a packet is created. Okay, a message is printed, and then this deliver packet over channel process is called. Okay, and after this we just update some statistics. So we say how much was the channel utilization time. It is plus transmission delay. Okay, so what does this process do? This process sees if the packet was corrupted. So depending on the PC, there's a probability of corruption. We may or may not call packet.corrupt, and depending on PL, the packet may or may not be lost. If the packet was lost, a message is printed, else we deliver the packet to the other side after a certain amount of time, after propagation delay amount of time. Okay, so that is the behavior of the channel. Now let us look at the sending and the receiving apps. So what is the behavior of the sending app? It's very simple. After a certain amount of time, after a periodic amount of time, it creates a message and calls RDT send, saying I want to deliver this message. Okay, if the RDT sender is ready to accept that, it returns true, else it returns false. If it returns false, the sending application tries after some time again to send the same message. Now what is the message that it is sending? It's just sending a number, just sending 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. For now, this is for the purpose of testing, so that the sending application keeps sending some numbers and the receiving application checks if it has got all the messages. Okay, so these two sort of implement a check for the logic of the sender and the receiver. Okay, once we have validated and verified the functioning of the sender and the receiver, then we can have sending applications and the receiving applications actually send some interesting data. Right now they are just sending numbers, so that we actually end up testing these RDT sender and receiver blocks. Okay, so let's look at the behavior of the sending application and the receiving application. So they are coded in the file applications.py. So the sending application just keeps creating new messages and calls RDT send. Okay, so every once in a while it just calls RDT send. So let's see, this is the sending application and this is its behavior. So there is a while loop, infinite loop. What it does, it just waits for a certain amount of time, that is a sending interval, which is actually 1 in this case, just 1, and it creates a message and calls RDT send. Okay, that's it. Now let's see the behavior of the receiving application. Okay, so recall, the receiving application is invoked when this RDT receiver calls this deliver data function. So it just has one function, deliver data. So there is a function called deliver data, and when the RDT receiver delivers data, the receiving application just checks if this is the expected data. So it checks if data is equal to the next expected message, and if not, it prints an error message. Okay, so this serves as a basic validation. So now let us look at the behavior of the RDT sender and the receiver for the go back N protocol. So this is implemented in file protocol gbn.py. So we have two classes, one is RDT sender and the other one is RDT receiver. So RDT sender, and it's a big class, and then we have RDT receiver. Okay, so before going through the code, let us see what are the functions that they should support. So RDT sender gets activated when the sending application requests its service using RDT send, so it has to have RDT send function, and when an acknowledgement comes back, that gets delivered using the RDT receive function. So it should have this RDT send and RDT receive function. In addition, it should have some function to do some processing upon a timeout. Okay, now similarly RDT receiver, when does it get activated? When a data packet arrives. So that is a RDT receive function. Okay, so it just has one function, straightforward. So let us go back to the logic of the go back N sender and the receiver. So here is a state machine for the sender and the state machine for the receiver. So we discussed this in the lecture in detail. The code essentially mirrors this description. It is very, very similar to this description. Okay, so let's go over the code. Okay, now what is different is there is a buffer. If you recall, there is a window for the sender which consists of the packets which have been sent but not yet acknowledged, and it also remembers how many more can be sent without waiting for acknowledgement. So essentially there is a variable called base which points to the base of the window. There is a variable called next sequence number which points to the next packet number that will be assigned to the new data that comes and that gets sent. And the sender also needs to actually store copies of all these packets, because if a timeout occurs, then all these packets are retransmitted. So the sender needs to store a copy of the packets which have not yet been acknowledged. And suppose an acknowledgement arrives for this packet, then the whole window shifts right by one position, right? So that is the behavior of the go back N protocol. So let us look at the state machine. So this is the state machine, and essentially what are the events that can happen? This is the beginning. In the beginning, base is 1, next sequence number is 1. Then the application might call RDT send. So this is what needs to be done. Or an ACK packet would have arrived, and that ACK packet could have been corrupt, or the ACK packet is not corrupt, in which case we have to shift the window right. Or a timeout occurs, in which case we resend all the packets in the window, okay, and start the timer again. So now I'm going to explain to you how this is implemented in the code, in the simulation code, okay. So this is the code for the sender. So the sender, okay, has this environment variable which is required for SymPy. It has a pointer to the channel, so this is fine. It has some default parameters. This is the length of the data packet, timeout value, the window size n, and k is the sequence numbers that are to be assigned to packet, okay. So if k is 16, then the packets will be numbered from 0 to 15. So packets will be 0 to 15 and then back from 0, 1, 2 and so on, okay. And now these are the variables for remembering the current window. So obviously we have a variable called base, which is this variable base. We have next sequence number, okay, which is also initialized to 1, and then we need to actually store the packets. So we need a buffer. We need to buffer the packets which are sent. So we have this base next sequence number, and this implements a buffer. What is this? This is a dictionary in Python, okay. This is a Python dictionary. It's right now it's an empty dictionary, and here we would add the elements. So dictionary is a data structure in Python where you can check if something exists or not, okay. You can search for a item and check whether it exists in the dictionary or not, and you can find it. And so it's a data structure in Python. So we have also some variables to maintain statistics. We have just number of total packets sent and number of retransmissions, okay. Now coming back to the sender, what are the functions it should have? It should have a function RDT send, okay, that is called by the sending application. It should have a function called RDT receive, and it should have a function for the timeout action. So let's see those. So this is the RDT send function. This is the RDT receive function, and this is there is a function for the timeout action which is here later, okay. So let's go over one of these. So RDT send, what happens when RDT send is called? Let's compare this with the state machine, because I just mentioned this code closely follows the state machine, very closely follows the state machine. So when RDT send is called, check if the window is full or not, okay. That is, if next sequence number is less than base plus n, that is, we are still within the window is not full. If the window were full, that means we have transmitted the maximum number of packets possible, and now we can't send any more until we receive acknowledgements and the window shifts right. So if next sequence number is less than base plus n, then we can send it, else we have to refuse data, okay. We have to refuse the application. So if it lies within the window, then what we do is we make a packet and we store it in the buffer, okay. So send packet is, this is a buffer, we store it in the buffer, and then we send that packet, and if no packets had been sent so far, if base was equal to next sequence number, we can start the timer, okay, and increment the next sequence number. So this is reflected exactly in the code, okay. So if next sequence number lies within the current window, so this is the range of numbers which denotes the current window. Okay, if it lies in the window, then we can send this, else we refuse, so we return false. Okay, so what do? We create a packet. Okay, we create this packet and we save it in the buffer. So this looks exactly like the description in the state machine. So let's just see. So we have send packet next sequence number is equal to the new packet. Okay, we send the packet using UDT send and so on. We start the timer. Okay, so you will see that the code closely follows the state machine description, and it's exactly similar for the receiver. Okay, the interesting thing is, what about this timeout function? When does it get called? How does it get called? Okay, so this is something interesting. So when does RDT send get called? When the sender application calls this function. When does RDT receive get called? When something appears on the channel. Okay, but finally, when does the timeout function get called? So notice that there is a timer which is implemented. Okay, this is a definition of a timer. Okay, this is a timer which has two functions, start timer and a stop timer. Okay, they are called in the other functions. Okay, when start timer is called, a process is created which keeps a count, and after the timeout value, it triggers the timeout action function. So here is the behavior. Okay, so initially timer running is true and it waits for a timeout value. Okay, it pauses here for a while, and when, let's say if timeout value was 2, then this the control pauses here for 2 units of time, and after that timer is running is set to false and the timeout action function is called. Okay, so this is when a timeout happens. Okay, so this is the timeout action function, but we may want to stop the timer in between, right? Suppose the timer has been started but a ACK packet arrives. So now we want to stop the timer. We don't want the timer to finish its action. In that case, we call the stop timer function. When the stop timer function is called, who calls the stop timer function? It is called in the RDT receive, when we receive a ACK packet. So let's just see. Yes, when we receive an expected ACK packet, we call stop timer, right? So when we call the stop timer, what actually happens is, it says select.timer.interrupt. So it actually interrupts this process, and then it says timer.running is false. So this process is interrupted. Okay, there's also a function called restart timer, which stops and starts the timer again. So we have at our disposal these three functions to be used inside the RDT send and RDT receive functions. Okay, and now finally this timeout action, which is called when the timer times out, contains all the logic that should happen when a timeout occurs. So let's go back to the FSM. What should happen on a timeout? Okay, we need to start the timer again, that is stop and start the timer again, and send all the packets that have yet been not acknowledged. So all these packets that were in the buffer that have yet not been acknowledged have to be resent. So let's see if this matches. Okay, so for sequence number in packets to be resent, we are just calling channel.udt.send. Okay, so we are just resending all these packets, and after resending them we start the timer again. So it is following this logic in the state machine. Okay, so that's a walkthrough through the template. So let's go over the assignment. So what does the assignment ask you? In the first part, the first part just asks you to play around with the assignment, the template, and run the simulation, check if it runs, check if there are any errors, and so on. And in the second one, it asks you to very different channel parameters and try and understand how the performance depends on these values: probability of corruption, probability of loss, propagation delay, and so on. Okay. The question 4 is very interesting. It asks you to optimize the channel parameters such as the window size for achieving the best performance. So essentially in the assignment, all the questions up to question 3 are very straightforward and easy. Question 4 is interesting, where you have to do a bit of optimization. Okay, so let's run a simulation and see for the given template. So this is a given template, right? So notice that any parameters that you want to set should be set from the file testbench.py. So this is a file where all the other components are instantiated and tied together. So here basically we import all the other files. Okay, create a SymPy environment and instantiate each component. So we instantiate the data channel, the ACK channel, the receiver, sender, and the two applications. And here is where we set the parameters. So in the questions you are asked to set some parameters and vary them and so on. So that you will set all of them in this file, within this file. Okay, so these are the channel parameters: probability of corruption, probability of loss, propagation delay, transmission rate, and so on. These are the protocol parameters, that is the window size for the sender, the sequence numbers, timeout value, and so on. And finally, this is the logic for actually performing the simulation. So let's take a look at this for a while. So when do we stop the simulation? Okay, so this is a code where the simulation is run. So here is the total simulation time. Okay, so you might increase this as you like. So we stop the simulation either when the total simulation time is exceeded or when a certain condition is met. For example, in this code I have implemented a condition where the receiving application receives the total number of messages, and if that exceeds some value, let's say 10, so if the number of messages received by the receiving application is greater than 10, then the simulation stops. So basically the simulation stops on each of these events, whichever occurs earlier. Okay, that's when the simulation stops. And when the simulation stops, some statistics are printed. For example, the total number of messages sent, the total number of messages received, okay, what fraction of the messages sent, packets sent were actually just retransmissions, what was the utilization of the channel, and so on. Okay, so this is the code that implements the simulation. So let's just run the simulation and see. So for now we have specified total simulation time is 200, and the simulation will stop if the receiver receives 10 messages. So let's run the simulation and see. Python 3 testbench.py. So the simulation ran pretty quickly, okay, and it finished at time 31. Why did the simulation finish? Because the receiving application received 10 messages. Okay, so before looking at the log, let's just see what were our settings. We had probability of corruption 0.1, probability of loss 0.1, and so on. Okay, so that means a 10% of the messages were corrupted or lost. Okay, so now let's look at the log. This is the log. So in the beginning, the window size was 5. So current window had these values, numbers, and base is equal to 1, next sequence number is equal to 1. At time 1, the sending application tried to send some data. Okay, it called RDT send. This was within the current window, so this packet was sent. Was the packet corrupted? No, the packet was not corrupted. A timer was started with a timeout of 5. At the end of this, current window is the same, base is 1, but the next sequence number is 2. So at time 2, this app tried to send the next data, and so on. So let's look at time 3, where something got corrupted. So let's look at this ACK channel. So the receiver got packet 1, receiver sent ACK 1, and on the ACK channel this got corrupted. Okay, So at the same time, the sending app was tried to send data 3 and so on. So this is a detailed log of what happens. Let's look at this event here. At time 6, a timeout occurred and it started retransmitting packets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so packet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all were retransmitted. Why were they all retransmitted? Because ACK1 did not arrive in time. So ACK1 must have got corrupted somewhere. Let's just check if that is true. Yes, this is indeed true. Packet 1, the ACK for packet 1 got corrupted. So even if an ACK was received for the other packets in the window, still a timeout happened for packet 1 and then all the packets in the window were retransmitted. So this shows a detailed log of what happened. And finally, at the end of simulation, at time 31, okay, that is the last time, 10 messages were received by the receiving application. So the total number of messages sent was 11. Out of them, 1 may be in the transit when the simulation stopped. So the receiving application, at the moment it received 10 messages, the simulation stopped. So maybe the 11th message was still in the still on the channel being propagated. Okay, the number of data packets sent was 37. So for actually effectively sending 10 messages, 37 packets were created. Okay, out of them 70% were retransmissions. Similarly, the ACK packets sent were 35, out of which 71% were retransmissions, and this was the utilization of the data and the ACK channel. Okay, so this log is pretty useful for validating your implementation. Okay, and statistics are very useful for tuning the performance of this template. So this is a discussion on the first part of the assignment. Okay, how to use the template, how to perform the simulation, and how to understand the results. The second part asks you to implement the selective repeat protocol. So hope that you like this assignment.